Story 1. People die all the time, and very rarely do people stop and think, that can happen to me. Basically, every time a celebrity dies of something I have not heard of before, unless they were very old or it was explicitly caused by a lifestyle choice that I do not engage in, it becomes a new fear unlocked situation for me. Story 2. People losing their jobs is even more terrifying when you have a family to support and you are the only breadwinner. Not knowing when you will be able to find another job makes it more difficult. Story 3. You can lose someone forever without any warning, and the world just keeps moving as if nothing happened. Story 4. We live in a world full of wasted human potential. There are many talented, gifted, and creative people who never get the chance to thrive simply because they are born poor. Story 5. In the United States, if you become disabled, especially at a young age, you are often doomed to a life of poverty unless you have significant savings, disability insurance, or family support. Disability benefits, which are generally far below poverty wages, usually take years to obtain. If you do not qualify for Social Security disability insurance, supplemental security income provides just under $1,000 a month. You are forced to live on that amount, cannot save more than $2,000, and if you get married, you lose your insurance and payments, making you completely dependent on your spouse. This situation is not entirely unique to the United States, and many disabled people struggle with poverty even in countries with better social safety nets. However, I am speaking specifically about the United States here. Story 6. Driving. Being inches away from oncoming traffic, one muscle twitch, text message, or any other distraction can cause a head-on collision. Story 7. Letting profits lead humanity. The green line goes up, so it must be good. Now there are plastics in our water, Teflon chemicals in almost everyone's blood, and pillars of smoke reach to the sky. We are walking blindfolded, and we are headed for a cliff. Story 8. Your country and world leaders have all the power over you. They can use it to make your life better but choose to make it more difficult. Story 9. Most of us are just working to pay for things in a world designed to influence us into buying things we do not need. Story 10. The excessive admiration and worship of celebrities can be dangerous. Fans may react violently if they perceive their idols to be insulted or defamed, sometimes leading to riots and violence. Story 11. If you do not have the money to pay your medical bills, you are in trouble, and I dislike the fact that we simply accept it. Story 12. Honestly, cars. We just zoom around in these machines that we assume will stop when we want them to. Story 13. Constant mass government surveillance. Once it was revealed that every call and message is monitored by the government, everyone accepted it, saying, okay, but it is for our own good, and carried on. Story 14. Not to repeat, but climate change is critical. Scientists no longer discuss preventing it. Instead, they focus on managing it, aiming to limit the cost to 2 billion lives instead of the entire population. We have already passed the point of no return. Society has effectively given up on its importance. Story 15. The infinite number of irrational numbers between rational numbers. What we think of as normal numbers are tiny specks in a sea of irrational numbers. Story 16. At any given time, one of many world leaders could choose to start an all-out nuclear war. Perhaps one of them decides one day that they have nothing to lose and just want to see the world burn. Story 17. The level of moral corruption that has been reached in recent years is alarming. People lie, manipulate, and harm each other without remorse. Story 18. Drunk driving and high driving to a lesser degree is a serious issue. It is alarming how many people continue to drive under the influence despite the efforts of Mothers Against Drunk Driving campaigns and the availability of ride-sharing services like Uber. Story 19. Our devices are listening to us to feed us advertisements. You can talk about something and get an advertisement for it. How are we just okay with this? Story 20. We are prepared to be obedient, uninformed workers from an early age. Then we are expected to work a job until our bodies are no longer capable of that work, and then we die. We have no choice but to either be complicit or financially destitute. It is unfortunate, but I try not to think about it. Story 21. We live on a giant rock spinning 1,000 miles per hour, flying around a gigantic nuclear fireball at 67,000 miles per hour. Story 22. Our current standard of living is destroying the environment and reducing wildlife habitats. Nothing is sustainable with 8 billion people. Story 23. Either the universe has no intelligent design, no plan, and this is all a sequence of chance occurrences starting with the Big Bang, which means there is nobody in control, or this is all part of someone's plan and there is somebody in control after all. They let things get bad quickly and never looked back. In that case, someone was capable of creating the universe and trillions of stars, and humans are the best they could do. Or worse, we are their rough draft. They also would have created a world where, in order to survive, every animal on the planet has to kill some form of life beneath them on the food chain and absorb its life energy, repeating this constantly to survive. Whose Hunger Games or Black Mirror or Squid Game inspired idea is this? This entire setup is dark. The being responsible for this creation is who we hope is our benevolent creator who loves all of their creations. People spend so much time arguing about which possibility is true that nobody stops to consider how each one is an absolutely terrifying concept. Story 24. A traitorous, racist, pedophile, and convicted felon is leading the United States government as a reckless authoritarian, with nearly half the country supporting him. Story 25. The complete disregard for social etiquette includes talking on speakerphone in restaurants, parents giving their children tablets with the sound on in stores or restaurants, watching loud short videos in public, video calling in stores, filming themselves anywhere while narrating, and playing loud music on the phone. If you ask any of them to please turn it down, they immediately become hostile and blame you for disrupting their sense of importance. This does not even cover people who let their children run wild everywhere. Story 26. Wildlife suffering. The sheer number of animals that have starved to death, been harmed, eaten alive, or died of disease over the past millions of years is immense. Evolution by natural selection is a disaster. Story 27. COVID-19. I know many people this virus has permanently disabled from even mild infections. I am one of those people, yet you hardly hear about it. Story 28. Reckless drivers. It is beyond terrifying how much people seem to forget that we are all driving around giant boxes of death and then proceed to cut off a semi-truck. Story 29. The fact that it is perfectly acceptable to euthanize an animal if it is suffering, yet performing the same action for an elderly person who is close to death is considered wrong, especially if they have severe dementia. I honestly do not know. Story 30. The fact is that a full-time job in the working class is becoming increasingly insufficient to support an individual. Costs are rising, while wages are decreasing. Story 31. Everyone collectively decided that COVID-19 does not exist anymore. Meanwhile, I and many others are bedridden or now have autoimmune or other problems that have destroyed any chance of having a good quality of life. Since no one cares anymore, you then get COVID-19 again because it was brought to you, and now you are severely affected. Story 32. How big is space? It is extremely large. It is nothing we truly need to worry about, but when you take a moment to think about it, it is terrifying how microscopic we are. Story 33. 99% of the population works to live. Pleasure, security, and happiness are all luxuries. It is literally non-negotiable. You can live your entire life barely scraping by, and it is perfectly acceptable that at any moment you can become horribly ill for a day or two and not be able to afford rent that month because of it. God forbid you do not get fired for calling out twice because you cannot afford to go to medical and get aid. Story 34. Anyone can steal your luggage from the conveyor belt at the airport, and no one pays attention to this. Story 35. That two of the biggest petulant babies in the world have the keys to 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal. Story 36. Obesity in the United States. The average American man is 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighs 200 pounds. The average American woman is 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighs 170 pounds. Even 1 in 5 children are obese now. Story 37. Many people regularly use 2-ton vehicles to travel to places they need to go, especially in areas with poor public transportation. Story 38. Lightning is huge bolts of electricity that shoot down from the sky at any given time at the speed of light, hitting any random spot. Story 39. People across the world are cheerfully voting for and supporting large numbers of deeply flawed leaders based on obvious, easily disproven lies, despite clear, openly available evidence that they are harmful individuals, con artists, or criminals, often all of these. This is seen in countries such as the United States, Poland, the Netherlands, Portugal, Sweden, Italy, France, Germany, Austria, and Britain. There is a need for a study on what COVID-19 has done to people's brains, as there is growing concern about possible long-term damage. Story 40. Driving is quite terrifying if you think about it. I have my driver's license. At first, I was pretty excited to drive, but over the years, I have developed a level of phobia about it. Now, all I see when I think about driving is the probability of horrendous accidents. I can manage short drives where I know the road well, but that is it. Story 41. I got post-COVID in November 2022 after getting either 2 COVID-19 infections or 1 COVID-19 and 1 influenza infection, possibly a month or 2 apart. Since I developed post-COVID, I can't do simple math anymore, constantly lose words, and experience severe fatigue. It feels like having brain damage, but without any clinical proof, so doctors often dismiss it. They are likely to either shrug and say nothing is wrong or recommend treatments that worsen the condition. People often assume or accuse me of being dumb or lazy. I used to get straight A's on tests in school regardless of the subject, even though I had only studied a day or 2 before the test. I was in the first year of upper secondary school in 2022 when I developed post-COVID and failed all classes that started during and after that spring term, except one. That class was about dogs, ethology, training, and care, which has been my special interest since I was about 8 years old. There is no cure for post-COVID. Some people do recover over time, with a few almost completely recovering. Recovery tends to show progress within 2 years. I have had almost none, and some symptoms have worsened over time. The pandemic never ended. The only thing that ended was the lockdown. If you are sick, regardless of symptoms, please protect others by staying at home or wearing a mask. You might recover without severe effects, but since COVID-19 began spreading, you may have caused someone else to either die or become severely disabled by transmitting it. Story 42. The unspoken reality of child abuse and child sexual assault is difficult to confront. The truth is that if you were to line up all victims and all perpetrators, it would not resemble a story about a creepy stranger in an alley. Instead, it would look like a family photo album. Expanding the definition of sexual abuse to include covert incest and voyeurism reveals many more female perpetrators than are typically reported in the news. Story 43. As a society, we are extremely distrustful of each other in most ways. Yet every day, we put complete trust that hundreds of people traveling 60 miles per hour in the opposite lane will not cross the 6-inch yellow line. Story 44. We spend over a third of our lives working just to afford being alive. If you hate it, you are the problem. Story 45. Children are supposed to start life with tens of thousands of dollars in debt to obtain an education required for most career-level jobs. Story 46. Driving. I get a split second of existential terror every now and then when I realize I am in total control of a vehicle going 70 miles per hour among other people doing the same thing. One little slip could take my life and the lives of others. Holy crap. Story 47. The decline of the general population's critical thinking has increased since alternative right movements and doctrines began to spread more widely online and influence many minds. It is concerning how much people are becoming less thoughtful, and willingly so. Story 48. Gasoline as a fuel produces flammable vapors that a spark, even when nowhere near the actual liquid, can ignite and cause a fire. Vehicles have hot components and an increasing amount of electronics. Additionally, gasoline contains benzene. There is no safe, acceptable amount of benzene exposure in laboratories, yet it is present in gasoline. For these reasons, the military uses diesel fuel. Story 49. How many criminals receive light sentences or barely serve any time and are released back into society to harm more people? Many criminal documentaries show that if those offenders had been kept in jail the first time, many more people would still be alive. Story 50. How untouchable the wealthy are compared to the common people. They can toy with our lives without us ever having a chance to defend ourselves. Once in a blue moon, the underdog gets a win, yet the wealthy do not suffer any significant consequences. Story 51. Earth's slow descent toward disaster due to climate change. I feel like it has been discussed enough, but no steps have been taken. Story 52. Trigger warning, because this topic really sets me off sometimes and freaks me out, that we are all going to die. Literally none of us will exist in 150 years. Even the people who knew us will not be alive to remember us. Imagine how many people lived before us in biblical times, medieval times, 200 years ago, and no one knows they ever existed. I mean, we live like we have a purpose, like we matter, but decades from now, dust. Erased forever. Story 53. Insurance companies operate for profit, and in many cases, you may not be covered in various situations. Story 54. Cataract surgery is not typically performed under general anesthesia. I am very afraid of anything getting anywhere close to my eye, so I would probably still panic through twilight sedation. Story 55. People record others without their permission and post it on the internet to create content. Story 56. Premium subscriptions are everywhere. You have to pay to continue scrolling on Instagram now, and people will actually do it. I don't care about not being able to use Instagram, but I know it will keep getting worse. I wouldn't be surprised if we were soon required to pay a subscription to use an email address or other essential services. You know the episode of the latest season of Black Mirror where the woman gets part of her brain replaced by a technological device, and the company gradually makes her pay more and more for it to keep working? Definitely realistic. Story 57. Extinction of animal species and the rapid reduction of biodiversity. We are in the middle of a human-caused extinction event unlike anything in history. Most people either do not know or do not care. We are destroying the only home we have and everything in it because of our own pride. Story 58. Billionaires are psychopathic criminals who will do anything to anyone to keep their stolen wealth. Story 59. Someone out there has seen all the evidence in the Epstein files and is just watching this unfold. Story 60. Getting seriously or chronically ill can happen and it drastically changes your life. People expect you to bounce back to where you were. I was diagnosed with cancer earlier last year and had 2 back-to-back surgeries. People don't understand that even though I might feel a bit better, I am still chronically ill. It does not go away. I need medication or I will die. I can never go back to where I was. Story 61. Trabajar 8 horas diarias. Tenemos que robar horas a nuestro sueño o tiempo libre para poder llegar a tiempo al trabajo y esos minutos no nos los remuneran. Story 62. The lack of privacy, the way electronic devices constantly collect data and share it for profit, and how being outside gives someone permission to record you just because you are in public. Story 63. Whatever is going on in the United States economy, education, healthcare, and human rights, I do not understand how the majority of people are not concerned in protesting. Story 64. Lack of public healthcare exists in some countries. Are you telling me they let you die if you are poor? It is not like someone chooses to be poor on purpose. Story 65. The abuse that occurs in the pornography industry and the unhealthy behaviors we have allowed to become normalized are concerning. Gagging is meant to be an unpleasant noise. Story 66. Offenders walking among us, but because they are wealthy, owning politicians and media, they get away with it. Story 67. Driving. We are all trusting thousands of strangers not to make one tiny mistake that could instantly kill us. Story 68. Death. One day you will simply be gone, lost to oblivion without even the memory of having existed. Yet, we push this thought to the back of our minds and continue with our day. The existential dread this evokes should be crippling. Story 69. When parents make all decisions for their children, they answer on their behalf, decide what to buy, what to wear, where to enroll for education, and where and how to live. Story 70. Car culture. 100 people a day are killed by automobiles in the United States. Pollution, noise, road rage, expensive maintenance, gasoline, fossil fuels, climate change, and other related issues. Story 71. Any car can kill dozens of people on a moment's notice, and all that is stopping it from happening is a pair of yellow lines. Story 72. In the age of information overload, the only one capable of filtering through all the information is artificial intelligence, and people take its word as gospel, even though it could be wrong too. Story 73. We have teeth in our jawbone for a portion of our childhood until they begin pushing out the first existing row of teeth. Story 74. If you carry unresolved feelings for someone but never reconcile in this life, you may only see them again after death. Story 75. Loneliness of the elderly. It has become normal for grandparents to live out their lives in complete isolation, which is deeply sad. Story 76. Where I live, we are in the danger zone of the Yellowstone caldera. I was very scared that day I learned we are all just calm with living on top of a volcano. Story 77. Living paycheck to paycheck. Some people live paycheck to paycheck and have literally only $1,000 at the end of the month. I can't understand how people can live this way. What if something happens? You can lose your job during a recession when there is also a shortage of jobs, making it difficult to find new employment. What if your health deteriorates or you get injured? I understand that some people cannot save money due to unfortunate circumstances, but some people around me choose to live paycheck to paycheck. A coworker of mine still lives with his parents and does not need to contribute anything. He could, in theory, save 100% of his money, but he has been living paycheck to paycheck his entire life. Story 78. An average of 150,000 people die around the world daily. Actually, while you are reading this, roughly 107 are taking their last breath. Story 79. Automobiles are giant machines made of metal that move at high speeds and are filled with flammable liquids. Nearly anyone is allowed to drive them. Story 80. You can go to any major city in the United States and see someone lying on the sidewalk, sometimes unclear if they are conscious or not. Story 81. My great-grandfather passed away. My dad called to tell me, but he was in one of his episodes where he was nodding off and snoring over the phone, so I tried to call my Nana with no answer. I lived about 6 hours away from my family in an abusive relationship. I genuinely just wanted someone to talk to about it, so I called my cousin. She told me she was in the car, and I asked if she heard. She said no, so we talked. After a bit, I told her, and she freaked out. I could hear her mother in the background. Then she hung up. When I tell you her stepmother, my Nana, and my dad all called me to scold me and tell me how awful I was to be the one to tell her. They said she could have died from shock because she was driving with her mom, but I didn't know, so I just took it all. I was nothing but tears. For days. That was the loneliest I have ever been in my whole life. I've never told anyone, but at that point, I considered ending my life. I felt like a nuisance, and honestly, I have always been the black sheep, just like my father, but without the crippling addiction. Now my dad has passed away, and the closest I got to opening up to my cousin about it was when I told her and brought up Grandpa. She said, "This is different. I take it in stride because I know I have been through a lot of death, more than most. I suppose that can cause me to be a little selfish." Story 82. At the end of every day, you will lose consciousness for a few hours. You can fight it, but eventually you will. If you fight it long enough, it will cause you to lose your grip on reality. Story 83. Plane crashes occur. Although statistics suggest they are rare, they still happen. People die nearly every time. Story 84. The growing power that large technology companies wield, and how it is negatively affecting us all as a species. Story 85. The prioritization of cars over human lives is a consistent design choice for cities in North America. Every metric is horrendous when compared to any European country with reasonable urban planning and transit options. Fatality rates for both drivers and pedestrians are astronomical. Emergency services cannot reach destinations fast enough. Housing and businesses are rarely located near each other, making walkability almost impossible. If you are not born in a city, most of your money will go towards buying and maintaining a car. Trains are rarely used. Only suburbs are built, which worsen the problem and create antisocial behavior. Mention an effective solution, and some suburban resident opposed to change will complain about their taxes funding public transit or bike lanes. Meanwhile, American cities carry 70 years of unpayable debt from building and maintaining elevated highways, which everyone must help pay off. whether they own a car or not. A great resource about this issue is the nonprofit Strong Towns, or, for convenience, any Not Just Bikes video on YouTube. Story 86. I think factory farms are terrifying in a way aging and tyranny are not. They have not always been with us. Story 87. Rideshares involve placing ourselves in vulnerable situations for the sake of convenience with a member of the general public. Story 88. There will never be anatomically correct female crash test dummies, so the safety features in every car are designed with men's safety in mind. They say they made a female crash test dummy, but it was just a slightly smaller male dummy. The dummies will never have anything bigger than the smallest A cup representing breasts because anything larger, especially beyond size DDD, would be considered too explicit and inappropriate to produce. As someone with size K breasts, when it comes to seatbelt placement, I have two options. 1. Hold it in place with any free hand I might have and risk injuring my hands and arms in a crash, or 2. Don't hold it, let it slide up, and risk serious head injury in the event of a crash. Story 89. I have always been amazed that we have become so comfortable with the dangers of driving cars. Sometimes I am cruising down the road and suddenly start thinking about all the horrible, life-altering things that could happen. Most of them are completely out of my control. Story 90. We are hurling through space around a black hole at 447,000 miles per hour, while orbiting a burning ball of hydrogen at 67,000 miles per hour, living our lives on the cooling crust of a molten ball of magma, with a temperamental weather system precariously perched on the edge of total obliteration and non-existence should our conditions change even slightly. And here we are occupying our hours of boredom watching movies and going to baseball games. It is pretty crazy. Story 91. The fact that we spend most of our lives asleep, unconscious, and completely vulnerable, and we all just do it every night without question. Like, good night. Time to go lie still in the dark for 8 hours and hope my brain does not show me a psychological horror movie. Story 92. I am an American and I often forget how bizarre it is that regular suburban people carry guns for self-defense, as if a wild boar will rampage through the mall or a foreign terrorist will walk around the grocery store. People go outside every day expecting they might have to kill someone, and that eventually someone will try to kill them. People who live in the safest, calmest areas buy guns and carry them all the time. People who have nothing to fear. People who do not have stalkers, do not work dangerous jobs, are not in witness protection, just regular individuals who work in hardware stores and accept as an inevitable fact of life that any given day could result in a standoff between them and a bad person. Story 93. People who were not born into wealth and could not afford a proper education are almost guaranteed a life of struggle. This is not because they failed, but because the system was never designed for them. The wealth gap continues to grow, the cost of living is extremely high, and the only plan left is to work until burnout, hoping that a pension system still exists by the time they are too old to work. Story 94. School shootings in America happen so frequently that many no longer react strongly. They say the number is in the hundreds. If that is true, not every incident is publicized. This means school shootings occur without anyone hearing about them. It is just data. I was in the 3rd grade when the Columbine shooting happened. My parents were terrified, and I could not understand why. We thought it was an anomaly and pushed it to the back of our minds as a terrible event that affected many innocent people. Time passed and we accepted that thought. Then it happened again, and again, and again. It became overwhelming and then unsurprising. Nothing in America has changed to fix this issue. We do not consider the possibility of it happening to our own children, but it is someone's child. Another parent sends their child to school and gets a phone call saying their child was shot at school while they were working. That nightmare is repeated in America so often, and nothing has changed. Story 95. We regularly flush away blood, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals every day, and much of it ends up back in the water we drink, barely treated if at all. Story 96. People drive giant heavy metal cages at incredibly high speeds, where an error of 2 inches means the difference between life and death for themselves and others. Story 97. Hiring strangers to care for our children. I would love to, I truly would, but I cannot bring myself to do it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.